Meagan Eskritt. Thank you very much for being here, and I understand there's some documents that are being handed out.
Yes.
And you're familiar with the time frame?
Yes.
I will warn you when we get to 20 minutes, if you get that far.
Thank you.
For questions.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Meagan Eskritt, and I'm here today as a parent and a concerned citizen to stand in opposition of Bill 39. An act respecting proof of immunization. As I'm sure you're aware, it seems there's no topic that evokes such passion in people as the topic of vaccines, and understandably so. Vaccination is regarded as a miracle of modern medicine, so unsurprisingly, people are shocked to find there are those who oppose vaccines altogether, or those who choose to follow an alternate schedule. Many people sincerely believe that all vaccines are safe and effective, that adverse reactions, both immediate and forthcoming, are extremely rare, and that no scientific data exists showing vaccines could cause harm. While I believe vaccines may contribute toward immunity against contracting some diseases, research shows they are also responsible for causing autoimmune and other detrimental lifelong illnesses, though these effects are rarely disclosed to the public. The topic of immunizations became of interest to me as I experienced ill health following a series of vaccinations 9 years ago. Shortly after receiving the flu vaccine and the combined hepatitis A and B for international travel, I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune conditions. I accepted the diagnosis and treatment, being told that I would have the conditions for the rest of my life. There was no explanation for these mystery illnesses. There was no cure. I had always believed the conventional wisdom on vaccines. They're safe, effective, and necessary. When my doctor recommended the vaccine for international travel, I gladly accepted. I was not informed of any risks associated with vaccination, despite statements on the vaccine package insert to discuss possible side effects, and despite recommendation by the Canadian Medical Practice Association to discuss with the patient and obtain consent for such situations as injecting vaccines or other drugs. Under informed consent is the necessity for patient autonomy, the right to make one's own health decision. And the principle of patient autonomy applies to all treatment, whether medical, surgical, or investigative. Therefore, Bill 39 violates informed consent, the right to determine what shall or shall not be done with one's own body, and to be free from non-consensual medical treatment. When I began to investigate the published research for myself several years after being vaccinated, I was taken aback. We are told there's no research proving harm from vaccines. We are told this information doesn't exist. What I have learned, however, is that neither the public, nor the legislators, nor many of our medical professionals are being made aware of the growing amount of medical research that does exist, showing that not only have vaccines been linked to a wide variety of severe and chronic illnesses, but they aren't as effective as we expected them to be, nor as necessary as we once believed. And despite this growing body of evidence being documented, policymakers completely dismiss it. And here we are now facing a push to remove our medical rights and freedoms. While I understand you may have doubts about what you've heard, what others before me have presented to you, there is evidence. What you see here, this binder, it's just some of the research that I've compiled myself over the years. This represents medical knowledge that isn't being addressed in medical education or taken into consideration by policymakers when it comes to making recommendations on vaccinations for public health purposes. What fills this binder is peer-reviewed scientific studies published in the world's largest medical library, the U.S. National Library of Medicine, many published in prestigious medical journals. Most of these journals are free for the public to view and read, so I encourage you to investigate for yourself and I encourage the public to do the same. The research contradicts most of what we've been told, what we widely believe about vaccine safety and real-world effectiveness. As quick examples of what kind of studies you could find amongst the medical literature, and that is contained within this binder, I will summarize here. An FDA study which found that while the pertussis vaccine can prevent symptoms, it doesn't prevent infection or transmission of whooping cough. A National Institute of Health study which found that individuals with relatively common genetic defects are more susceptible to vaccine injury. A World Health Organization recommendation for the use of high-dose vitamin A in the treatment of any case of measles which requires hospitalization in order to prevent complications. A CDC report showing that over 92% of the decline in mortality from measles in the U.S. in the 20th century occurred prior to the introduction of the vaccine. And a report funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which found that less than 1% of all vaccine adverse events are ever reported due to lack of awareness by medical professionals. I would encourage you to visit vaccineguide.org for an excellent compilation of scientific literature. Now, if I could share some of the research in a bit more detail with you. Regarding autoimmune conditions, I've included a copy of several papers for you to peruse, one detailing serious autoimmune adverse events, and I will also reference two others. The first study, I wasn't able to access the full article, but I thought it was important to share, and I will summarize here, and you can access the abstract if you wish. The study is titled, A Case Control Study of Serious Autoimmune Adverse Events Following Hepatitis B Immunization, from the journal Autoimmunity, June 2005. And I quote, chances of exposure to hepatitis B virus in adults is largely dependent on lifestyle. Adults should make an informed consent decision, weighing the risks and benefits of hepatitis B vaccines as to whether or not to be immunized. End quote. This study calculated the risk of serious autoimmune adverse events reported to the U.S. Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System database after receipt of hepatitis B vaccination, compared to a control group that received a tetanus-containing vaccine instead. Adults who received a hepatitis B vaccine were 5 times more likely than the control group to develop multiple sclerosis. The hepatitis B vaccinated group also had a significantly increased risk for rheumatoid arthritis, optic neuritis, lupus, alopecia, vasculitis, and thrombocytopenia. In a second study, that which I have included a copy for you, I believe it's the first one, the evolution of multiple sclerosis in France since the beginning of hepatitis B vaccination, from the journal Immunologic Research, December 2014. Quoting from the article, figures in France show a definite statistical signal in favor of causal link between the hepatitis B vaccine and multiple sclerosis, end quote. In France, cases of multiple sclerosis rose by 65% in the years following an aggressive national campaign to increase hepatitis B vaccination rates. This paper found a significant correlation between the number of hepatitis B vaccine doses given and the number of multiple sclerosis cases 1 to 2 years later. So just from hearing this information, we can look at the benefit versus risk analysis, and one may ascertain that giving a 1-day-old baby a hepatitis B vaccination is not a good idea. However, if you refuse this as a parent, you're told you're putting your child's life in danger. If you decide to refuse that vaccine altogether, your child may not be able to have an education. This bill is a one-size-fits-all agenda. It is in direct violation of the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights, the Nuremberg Code, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the Canadian Constitution. But some proponents say that it is unethical to not vaccinate. It is our moral obligation to protect the herd, so these individual rights should be superseded. But to debate their ethics, we need to understand the facts. And the facts are undeniable. Vaccines involve risk. Now, whether that risk outweighs the benefits, that's the individual's choice to make, the parent's choice for their child. That is not a choice that should be mandated by the government. That is not a choice that should be made without true informed consent. That is a choice that must be made by every person considering vaccination. A certain percentage of the public will be harmed, and the problem is that we don't know who. What we do know is that in the United States, the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out more than $4 billion due to vaccine injury and death. The National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 removed all liability from vaccine manufacturers. This historic law acknowledged that vaccine injuries and deaths are real, and that the vaccine injured and their families should be financially supported, and that vaccine safety protections were needed in the mass vaccination system. Even the CDC admits there are risks with vaccines. In a document titled "Vaccination Mandates the Public Health Imperative and Individual Rights," the authors state, "Vaccines are safe and effective. However, they are neither perfectly safe nor perfectly effective. Consequently, some persons who receive vaccines will be injured, and as a result, some persons who receive vaccines will not be protected. Most adverse events associated with vaccines are minor and involve local soreness or redness at the injection site, or perhaps a fever for a day or so. Rarely, however, vaccine can cause more serious adverse events. Whether an adverse event that occurs after vaccination was caused by the vaccine or was merely temporarily related and caused by some totally independent and often unknown or unidentified factor is often difficult to ascertain. This is particularly problematic during infancy, when a number of conditions may occur spontaneously. In a given instant, determining whether vaccine was responsible may be impossible. Acknowledging that vaccines, as with any medication, are not without risk to the patient, that vaccines, unlike other medications, are a medical intervention generally given to healthy individuals, and that vaccination has benefits beyond the individual by significantly benefiting the public health through creation of herd immunity. The VICP was established to shift the monetary costs of vaccine injuries away from vaccine recipients and manufacturers." End quote. I share this article to number one, reiterate the fact that vaccines can and do cause harm. And number two, to investigate the statement that vaccination has benefits beyond the individual by significantly benefiting the public health through creation of herd immunity. The theory of herd immunity claims that if enough people are vaccinated, herd immunity will be achieved and chains of infection will be disrupted. So let me bring light to this with a summary from several studies. The first, I believe, was mentioned in a previous presentation, the largest measles epidemic in North America in a decade, Quebec, Canada, 2011, from the Journal of Infectious Disease, March 2013. This paper analyzed the details of the 2011 outbreak with 725 cases, of which 678 occurred in one outbreak. Measles vaccination rates were high when the outbreak occurred. 97% of children had received one dose by 28 months of age, and 90% had received 2 doses. Rates were even higher by the time the children entered school. The person who initiated the outbreak was vaccinated during childhood. During the outbreak, 21 infants contracted measles, 4 were hospitalized, but none had pneumonia or serious complications. In a school outbreak where vaccination status was shown, 49% of all measles cases were in children who had received 2 doses of the measles vaccine. Passive surveillance significantly underreported the number of measles cases that occurred in fully vaccinated people. Waning immunity in adolescents who received 2 doses of the measles vaccine suggests that elimination of measles may not be possible, even with a 100% vaccination rate. Second study, copy of which is provided to you, titled "Outbreak of Measles Amongst Persons with Prior Evidence of Immunity," New York City, 2011. From Clinical Infectious Diseases, 2014. Quoting from the article, "This is the first report in which a person with a verified secondary vaccine failure, despite receipt of 2 doses of MMR, was demonstrated to be capable of transmitting disease to other individuals." End quote. To summarize, scientists know that people who are vaccinated against measles can still get the disease. However, they originally believed that only unvaccinated people can spread measles to others. This paper provides evidence that measles can be transmitted from a fully vaccinated person to other fully vaccinated individuals. A 22-year-old woman with documented evidence of having received 2 doses of the measles vaccine transmitted measles to 4 people who were supposedly immune. Measles antibody levels are expected to decline over time. However, the loss of asymptomatic natural boosting that used to occur when measles freely circulated could affect population-wide immunity against the disease. Widespread measles vaccination reduced public exposure to the measles virus, reducing opportunities to boost immunity among vaccinated people, which may contribute to waning antibody levels, loss of population immunity to measles, and an increased ability of vaccinated persons to transmit the disease. And a third journal I'll share, I do not have a copy of that for you, but you can look it up. It's titled Asymptomatic Transmission of the Resurgence of Bordetella pertussis, whooping cough, from Biomed Central Medicine, June 2015. This study shows there has been an increase in the incidence of whooping cough. 3 reasons are usually given to explain the rise in cases: waning immunity following vaccination, evolution of B. pertussis, low vaccination rates. The authors of this study provide evidence of a 4th reason to explain the resurgence: asymptomatic or subclinical transmissions of Bordetella pertussis. Vaccinated individuals who don't exhibit signs of the disease are able to infect other people. The documented failure of cocooning, which is vaccinating family members to protect newborns and infants, is compelling evidence for asymptomatic transmission of the disease from vaccinated individuals to susceptible people. The study provides a scientific explanation for B. pertussis genetic patterns, the failure of postnatal cocooning, the resurgence of whooping cough, and why herd immunity and eradication of the disease may be unattainable. I have included other studies showing evidence of the imperfect immunity provided by pertussis vaccination for you to look at. They corroborate the findings that I just outlined, that vaccination does not guarantee herd immunity and that vaccinated individuals still spread disease. People who take the time to make an informed decision know that the science is inadequate to state that vaccines are perfectly safe. We want choice when there is risk. We want people to know that they have a choice too, and they have a right to question the vaccine schedule. We don't have to look back very far in history to see that vaccines are problematic, and that there have been very serious reactions to vaccines that are no longer in production, but were used despite evidence of harm. And you've heard stories of that in the previous presentations. One example, according to the 1985 Institute of Medicine study by the Committee on Issues and Priorities for New Vaccine Development, Division of Health and Promotion and Disease Prevention, the whole cell pertussis vaccine doses reached 17,994,600 yearly. The result was 7,197,840 cases of minor reactions, 10,283 convulsions, 164 cases of encephalitis, and 58 cases of chronic disability, and an estimated 2 to 4 deaths per year. As a result of these findings, the Institute of Medicine recommended a switch to the acellular version. A few years later, in 1992, a study in the American Journal of Epidemiology confirmed, and I quote, "Significant associations were revealed between encephalopathy and receipt of DTP vaccine less than 7 days before onset of illness." And still today, you can open the product monograph for Infinrix, which covers the DTaP, IPV, and Hib, and you will see what used to be labeled SIDS, now sudden unexpected death, is listed under adverse reactions. I have included a copy of one study regarding sudden unexpected death following vaccination for you to peruse. So now that you've heard a bit of the science, let's talk about what we all want, which is the health and safety of our children. Let's talk about what's stopping us and how to move toward the common goal. So to do that, the public needs to be given all the facts. Many have never made an informed decision regarding vaccines and other interventions. They simply comply because they trust their doctor, who trusts the medical and pharmaceutical industry's recommendations. If a parent expresses apprehension instead of the doctor providing solid research, they ensure parents that their concerns are unfounded. Doctors need to practice informed consent. I'll share an interesting story regarding informed consent. At 8 weeks pregnant, I fainted. I was taken to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor on duty recommended a tetanus shot because I had fainted and received a small scratch. A tetanus shot, meaning a Tdap vaccine. Now, if you check the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, It clearly states they do not recommend administration of this vaccine before 13 weeks. It states it should ideally be given offered at 27 to 32 weeks of gestation. Moreover, the product monograph for Boostrix, which is the tetanus, diphtheria, and acellular pertussis booster vaccine used in Canada, states that the use of Boostrix may be considered during the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and that it should only be used, and I quote, when the possible advantages outweigh the possible risks. It also clearly states human data from prospective clinical studies on the use of Boostrix during the 1st and 2nd trimester of pregnancy are not available. So I ask, should we question our doctor's advice? Or should we be informed to make those decisions with our doctor? I suggest we need to rethink, we need to review the data and decide if the risks of getting certain vaccines outweigh the benefits. Look at the disease prevalence risk versus risk of adverse event. With the growing body of evidence that vaccines can cause chronic lifelong illness, we cannot simply do what we have always done. We need safer vaccines for those who want them. We need to take a deeper look at what is going on, and we need to ask hard questions, and we need to demand the answers. We need to listen to each other. We need to acknowledge the facts. Fortunately, there are a growing number of doctors, scientists, and other medical professionals who are voicing their concerns about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Sadly, some of those individuals are ridiculed and discriminated against. So, should those who make informed decisions and oppose mandatory vaccinations be labeled as dangerous, delusional, accused of spreading misinformation? It seems many proponents of mandatory vaccinations do not want to have a peaceful discussion. They do not want to acknowledge the emerging research. They do not want to investigate the experiences of countless parents who watch their child fall ill or worse after vaccination. They have been and continue to tell the public the same thing, that the science clearly shows that vaccines are the most important health advance of the 20th century, that the science is settled. This is what we are being told despite the documented research. We are told the consensus is that the benefits outweigh the risks for every single person. To quote Michael Crichton, historically, the claim of consensus is a way to avoid debate by claiming that the matter is already settled. There is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. It is obvious that the governing body directs us to science that is biased in their favor. When in a debate they dismiss that the science is there and that there is science showing vaccines can cause damage. This has happened throughout history. Vaccine hesitancy and opposition is not a new phenomenon. From the earliest days of vaccination, many people opposed for many reasons, but mostly because so many children suffered serious health problems. Vaccines have and continue to cause harm to some individuals. The issue here is not black and white. There is no right or wrong. Science is never 100%. It is always changing and evolving. If vaccines are capable of causing both acute, short-lived adverse reactions and chronic, unremitting problems, then perhaps the strategy for disease prevention requires reevaluation, because it seems we're trading acute, short-term childhood illness for chronic, lifelong illness. Please understand the serious implication of this bill and the importance of your due diligence on this matter. Now that you are aware of risks of vaccines, now that you've heard some of the facts, you can decide for yourself. Is it ethical to mandate a pharmaceutical product with known side effects and documented injuries? To discriminate against individuals who either do not want to take the risk or who have already been harmed previously by vaccines? Is it ethical to deny unvaccinated children the right to a public education? Before you make your recommendations, I implore you, become informed about all issues regarding vaccine safety, explore the history of infectious disease and vaccinations, and let this public hearing be a starting point. Research all the information being presented from both sides and make your decision from that. Please give parents the choice to make this decision for their children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Questions? Ms. Rogers? We have about...
Okay, just one question. Thank you very much for the very articulate and also scientifically grounded sharing of data. So my one question would be, given the data that you shared with us today, much showing how, for example, the eradication of some of these diseases for which we vaccinate is unattainable. Some showing that those who are vaccinated can still get and transmit the illnesses for which we're vaccinating, that there's growing research in the scientific community that is not known by or shared with the general population, even government or health practitioners. What do you think the impact of Bill 39 going through would be specifically, from your opinion?
I think that the implications are huge. I think that, as you've heard from parents who, they're devastated. They don't know what they're going to do. They're being discriminated against. Their children won't be able to attend school or won't be able to go back to school if they're already in school. So the implications are huge for this, for children, because there are risks, for families, because they want their children to receive a public education. They want their children to not be denied that right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Seems there are no further questions. Oh, Mr. McKee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just reviewing quickly the documents you provided, I guess the studies about MS being caused by hepatitis B, there seems to be competing research out there that would say that it doesn't cause. You know, I look quickly at the CDC or the Institute of Medicine, and they've conducted their own researches as well. They've reviewed published and unpublished research, including France, which would lead them to conclude that hepatitis B shots do not cause MS. Are you in disagreement with those findings?
No, not at all. I'm just saying that when there's evidence that there could be risk, that we should have the choice.
And similarly, you talked about the pertussis, the DTaP. I guess looking quickly over the documents, I believe that, you know, vaccinated children, they can, it says, still carry the disease, but would you agree that symptoms are less severe and the risks are diminished significantly if the person is vaccinated?
Sorry, could you say the last part again?
Just that it's been shown that vaccinated children can still carry the disease,
symptoms? Yes,
but would you agree
agree
that the symptoms and the risks are less severe if they are vaccinated?
From what I've read, yes, they can be less severe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I just wanted to address some of what you were speaking about today, and I guess sort of challenge some of the blanket statements that you were making around science and scientific consensus. The overwhelming data that is out there does support vaccinations, and I don't think the scientific community has ever said that there are no risks. I think that is part of the whole, that is part of science. Science keeps evolving, that there are certainly risks, but the science supports that vaccinations for most people are good, and that they are a good public health idea and public health policy. So I guess I just wanted to sort of make that clear, that the scientific consensus is that we should have vaccinations, we should have high vaccination rates, and so I guess I really just had a comment wanting to clarify that. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I don't know if I guess
Or you're just...
I guess I just wanted to comment. I can ask a question if So I guess my question would be if you have anything specific to add on Bill 39, since this really isn't a hearing on whether or not on the science of vaccinations. It's really on this specific part of Bill 39, and we already do have mandated vaccines in New Brunswick. We just have some exemptions for public school health children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that question?
Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering if you had anything to add specifically on the topic of Bill 39, since that's what we're here to discuss today.
Okay, yes, I understand, yes. So yes, I understand there is overwhelming research that shows that they are safe, but I guess it comes down to where there is risk, there has to be choice. And even if we go with the 1 in a million statistic, 1 in a million serious adverse event or death, that if I knew it was going to be my child, I should have that choice to make.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking your time to be here to present. Next, we have